Manish, welcome to Conversations Live.
Thank you, Kabir. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Fantastic. Manish, you wear multiple hats. So you are the people lead at ENL Rogers. You are, I take it, an inner engineering trainer, corporate monk, and you've just written your third book. So you work with people, their energy, and their emotions. Is that right to put it?
Well, yes, you can say that. I work with people, just like a lot of us. My point about what I do is really around helping people grow and excel in what they do.
From a very high surface level, people tend to grow from either pain or pleasure. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And how do we make sure that people grow from pleasure rather than wait for pain to be a trigger?
Okay, I think we need both in our lives. And this comes from the Japanese philosophy where it's called Kensho or Satori. That is when you grow from pleasure or you grow from pain in terms of the experiences you face in your life. We can't just have one of it. As we know, life is made of ups and downs, peaks and troughs. And you need to have both of it so that you can have the most of the experiences. And it's all about the energy that it generates. When you have a painful experience in your life, it triggers you to stop, to pause, and to make changes and to take decisions. And very often, if you've been able to introspect on that, it helps you move forward. So it's an essential element, and you can't avoid it, right? And once you've had that, then you can shift to growing with pleasure. That is focusing on objectives, something that you want to achieve. So you use the energy of the pain as the kickstart, as the momentum first, before changing gears, then shifting gears with the energy of growing with pleasure.
How do you keep momentum? Because obviously, if I take your own example, how did you get into it? Was it pain or pleasure? And how did you develop into becoming who you are today?
So actually, it started with pain for me, from a tragedy of life when I was 18 years old. So I was studying at university in Singapore. I'd earned a scholarship to study at the Nanyang Technological University. And I was also there with my elder brother. So Vikram, he was there since 3 years. And I was there just 4 months. And it was a bright Sunday. And then what happened was we were playing football and he collapsed on the field. By the time we called the ambulance, it was too late. And my brother passed away in the ambulance in front of my eyes. So my life changed that day because he disappeared. It was a shock for me. And the hardest thing I ever had to do was to call home and inform my parents that my brother had just passed away. That event triggered a huge amount of pain in me because I went into a state of shock. For the next 3 days, I didn't have any emotions, not even a tear, because I was in such a state of shock. And at the back of my mind, the only thing that came up was stay strong and you have to bring your brother's body home. So that event, that painful experience triggered something in me to grow, because when I came back, I had to forego my scholarship. Of course, my parents didn't want me to go back to study abroad. Having gone through that traumatic experience and suppressed my emotions so much, getting into a state of shock, I felt emotionally crippled. What I would call a term is emotionally constipated. I didn't have a lot of emotions accessible to me. And that triggered me to work on myself because I felt broken.
If we were to look at somebody that has consistently grown through pain, which might have been caused by social issues or conflicts, but nevertheless grown through pain. How do you compare such a person to somebody that might have grown through pleasure and being lucky to be in a position to have that sort of growth. Is how do you measure the two, and what are the potentials of growth compared with each other?
I think the one who has gone through, my personal view, who has gone through pain more, has more potential to grow because they've developed the muscle of facing adversity more. And in that sense, they also develop something unique, which is they're more grateful for what they have, what they've been through. So they know when they have those moments of pleasure, of joy, they're grateful for it. They're more aware of the privileges that they have. And if you look at it, if you look at our grandparents or parents who've had to go through hardship to reach where they are today, they are very grateful, and they find joy in the simple things. Because my biggest takeaway from this is, pain is inevitable. Okay, suffering is optional, and growth is intentional.
Suffering is optional. I really want to hear more about that.
Yeah. When you face a tough situation, a loss, or you get hurt, you get pain. So the pain is a physiological reaction you have. The suffering is the emotional reaction you have. And suffering, you have a choice. You have a choice to keep suffering for how long, or you have the choice to feel the pain and to transform it. That's why I say pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional because it comes with a choice. And growing from that is intentional.
You mentioned something quite interesting. You said going through the experiences. If we were to look at that, we all go through experiences, right? And how do you differentiate going through an experience and analyzing it and learning from it, rather than just going through experiences? Is there a term, or how do you qualify the two?
I think that the difference is one word, is being mindful. Okay. The fact is, we are not our thoughts. We are more than that. We can observe our thoughts. That's a critical element that makes us humans. That is, whatever we experience, we have the ability to observe it, to step back and to feel what we are experiencing. The main thing is, you don't learn from experience. You learn by reflecting on the experience.
Absolutely.
So the idea is, at points in time, you have to pause, to spend time with yourself, to introspect, to reflect on it, and to take out whatever the lessons you can take out from it. Be it lesson, but also be it also gratitude. What are you grateful for the experiences that you've had?
And how does this lead to breakthroughs, like, the wow moments?
Mm-hmm. Well, the breakthroughs is when you are able first is to experience the feeling, right? So the point about managing emotions and handling and transforming emotions is to be with it. It's not to suppress it. It's not to put it on the corner. Is to be with the emotion. When you process it like that, when you be with it, you allow it to flow. Because at the end of the day, an emotion is an energy in motion. And first is you be with it. It allows the emotion to flow. And from there, you are in a different state. That is, you moved on from, let's say you've been through an experience where you felt resentment or regrets. When you give yourself time to experience it, the emotion flows. And then you go into a different state, which allows you then to be more calm and present and to reflect on it. And these are the moments which allows you to access breakthroughs. The second thing that allows you to access a breakthrough is being able to realize that all of us, we live with the concept of a hindsight window.
Okay.
A hindsight window is what? It's the moment of time when you have an experience in your life, something happens to you, and until the moment you realize that was meant to happen. Okay? So, and the longer the window you have, that is, the longer you keep that window open, that something happened to me, and it was meant to happen, you could extract something from it in terms of gratitude or lesson. the longer the window you have, the more miserable your life is.
A lot of times, people will say that I've been lucky or it was meant to happen, versus what I call the act of manifestation. So consistent action, consistent focus. Think about it long enough, it will happen. And whilst we're talking about energies, it's almost aligning all the energies in a way that makes what you want to see happen. How do you think that is in line with what you've just said with regards to the hindsight window?
Okay. See, the hindsight window is a concept to be able to understand and how you take on whatever has happened to you, what you faced in your stride. And it's an equation. So the equation is, it's like when something happens to you, so the event happens, so you get fired, and you reach a time when you accept, well, it was meant to happen, so that it triggered me to do something else. How long you keep the window open will impact your ability to manifest something positive in your life. So the shorter the window is open, the quicker you're able to manifest a positive change. The longer the window remains open, the more miserable your life is. And there's an emotional formula to it. Gratitude and acceptance of your past equals hope for the future. Regret or resentment in your past equals fear for the future.
And if we were to reverse this now and talk about our power to manifest, the power of manifest, how do you explain that? How do you explain the mechanism behind the power of manifest?
So the power of manifest brings your hindsight window to the present. And from the present, you have what I would call the foresight window, which means how are you feeling in the moment in order to create and visualize and create, or what you call visualize and materialize, what you want to create in your life. So if you're feeling low in terms of energy, if you're vibrating at a lower frequency, you're going to only attract more of that. Make sense?
Yep.
And when you connect the dots looking backwards, if you're bringing emotional baggage with you, that is, you haven't accepted, your window is still open, you're still resentful of your past, you're still feeling it in the moment. Very often you might be feeling bitter, you might be feeling frustrated. Can you create and manifest with that kind of energy? No. To be able to create and manifest positively, you need to be in a state where you are open, where you are at peace, where you are vibrating at a higher level, that is, from a level of gratitude and upwards. That's why we said the threshold to cross is the threshold of courage. The courage to face and to accept whatever has happened.
But we all have emotional baggage. We all have situations of previous conflict that might have been resolved, but we hold emotional baggage. How do we manage that, protect ourselves to be able to still look into the future and manifest?
So the emotional baggage you hold is very simple. Is either is the window still open or is it closed? If the window is open, the emotional baggage will pull you down. If you've closed the window, you've accepted it, what has happened, you're able to move forward. I take my own example, I could have left my window open. When my brother passed away in my arms after a football match, I lost my elder brother. He was my mentor, he was my guide. I lost my scholarship. I had to come back and I could have left the window open. With luck, with opportunity, with guidance, I was able to close the window and move forward. I can only imagine what my life would have been if my window was still open. I would have been regretful and resentful of my past.
But then during that process, and if we stick to emotions, we tend to always suppress them or hold them down. How do we best assess that? And how do we manage those emotions?
So the answer is very simple. We are born with the quality, the ability to manage our emotions. If you look at children, kids, you'll see that kids naturally they are at ease with their emotions. They can feel the emotion, they express it, and once they've expressed it, and once they've been with the emotion, they move on to something else. Agree? We learn to try to suppress it through our education system. That is, we are born emotionally resourceful, but we are educated out of it. That is, you have to be rational, you have to be calm, you have to show a certain image, which means you're not able to express your emotions openly, especially men, if you look at it. And my biggest takeaway is when you look at kids growing up, the way they express themselves, the way they are lively, they are real, they are authentic with their emotions, and that's the way we are meant to be.
If, for instance, let me give you an example. Everything that we touch, the glass here, the plant, everything that we feel is matter, right? And matter is, in simple terms, atoms vibrating at a certain frequency, right? And likewise, our body, our hands, our internal organs, our brain, they all matter and all vibrating at its own frequency, to keep things very, very simple. But what about our thoughts?
Your thoughts are energy. Your thoughts carry energy, and it generates emotions in you also. So the best way you can put it is, if you look at the power of intention, when you have a positive intention in mind, it carries a certain energy. So whatever we think, so you have the ability to think about something, we reflect and we have thoughts. That thought generates a reaction in us. Okay. Be it can be, you can have a positive emotion or a resourceful emotion, or a negative response, or what we call an unresourceful emotion when you think about something. And from a thought, it starts with a small energy, and then it amplifies because it goes into your emotions. That is the feeling that you have, so the thought creates vibration in you. You agree? And it's the vibration that you have. So, for example, you have certain emotions have a lower vibrational level or frequency. So emotions like shame, guilt, anger, resentment, jealousy, all these vibrate at a lower level. As compared to emotions like courage, clarity, the willingness to learn, so learning, as well as love, have higher energies, higher frequencies.
So we have our thoughts, and we have, which is stored, which are energy stored. But then we also have our emotions, which is based on what we're currently feeling. And then there's this element of energy, right? What is the link between the three? Are the energies always changing? Are they static? Are we always in control of them? What is the link?
The energy is always moving. That's the first thing. The link is when you start with a thought, the thought is a starting point, and then it amplifies it transforms into emotions that you hold. And you call it a state, you call it an emotion, you call it a feeling, which vibrates at different levels. Basically, you have two types of energies or two types of emotions. I use it interchangeably here. You have on one side life enriching energies, and on the other side life depleting energies. This is based on the research by a philosopher and a scientific researcher, a doctor, by the way, Dr. David Hawkins, who wrote a book called Power versus Force.
Okay.
And in this book, Power versus Force, Dr. Hawkins explains these two concepts of life enriching and life depleting energies. And he created a map, he called it the map of consciousness, where you have listed all the energies, all the emotions you have ranked based on the level of vibration. And there's also a threshold. That is, once you cross that threshold, you go down, it starts to deplete your life. And that threshold, that energy of that threshold, the emotion of the threshold, you know, is what energy? Is the energy of courage.
Okay.
Right? So the moment you have courage, you start to do something positive. And from courage, then you move to the next level, which is gratitude. And from gratitude, then you go into clarity, you go into until the highest level, which is love.
And what about thought and thought process? Because thought is an energy that you're storing, but the thought process is a mechanical process happening.
So you thought everyone has different thought processes. And a thought process would be linked to how you see the world. What are the filters? We all see the world through different filters. Some are more big picture thinkers, some are more detailed, some are more reflective, some are more in the action mode. So whenever they think, they'll look at, so what does it mean? What do I have to do? Some are why framers. What means is they need to understand the reason, the why before making any decision. So we all wired differently based on the filters that make up our mindset, our minds. And how does that come across is it's a balance of, it's a function of nature and nurture. Okay, nature is the genes that you have from your parents and your ancestors, and the nurture is the environment that you've grown up with, including your education system, your peers, your bringing from your family members, as well as what happened to you during the age of 5 to 13. Okay, what that means is who we are today in terms of our mental makeup, that is the beliefs and the values that we hold as human beings, are a function of what happened to us between the age of 5 to 13. Because at that time, our mind as kids, as children growing up, acts like a sponge. Whatever is said to you, you create an impression, an image, or you create a meaning out of it, and that becomes part of your identity, out of your belief system and your value system.
If different thoughts have different levels of energy, how do we then religiously train ourselves to keep up to the positive thoughts, to keep up, to block the negative thoughts? I know it sounds very simplistic when I'm saying it now, but let's look at it from an energy level. It becomes interesting when we do that. Because if those thoughts have this tendency of having such an impact on our energy level, then how do we stay there? Like you mentioned, the threshold line.
So the thoughts that we have energy. Yeah. But more importantly, it's not the thought which has the most energy, it's the emotion it generates in us. That's what we need to focus on. So the formula is, you start with a thought, it triggers an emotion in us. The emotion can be, or the energy that it triggers is either positive or negative, or that is resourceful or unresourceful. And our ability is, we can change the emotion or we can change the thought. And as you mentioned yourself, it's training. It's like you're building a muscle. When you go to the gym, you build a muscle. And what are the practices that you have to train your thoughts, to train your mind? That's where people meditate. Or you can have a meditative practice. It doesn't mean you need to sit in a Buddha position and meditate. You can have a meditative practice to hold, to be with yourself, to breathe, and to, I would say, bring the vibration that you have inside outside, and vice versa. So an example of meditative practice would be gardening. When you're doing gardening, for example, for those who do gardening, they are at their best selves. They're not having any force coming in. It just flows. They're just in the moment. They're just present. In the same way, just like taking a walk in nature. So these are examples. Or listening to music as well. So these are practices which allows you then to train yourself from a mental perspective, that is your thoughts, but also train yourself from an emotional perspective. Both are related. We shouldn't forget that.
I want you to go a little bit deeper, in the sense that, you know how when something happens to you and it's bad, then your system starts to fall apart. Your emotions go down, all your frequencies go down, etc. But then you deal with your issues, you handle the issues, and then in hindsight, you tell yourself, you're almost thankful that this happened to you because you've grown. Is there a way to tell yourself, well, I know this happened to me, but somewhere down the line, it will make sense. And somewhere down the line, this needs to happen to me and I will learn from it.
The first thing is to stop and to pause. Whenever something happens like that, the first thing that we don't realize is our breathing changes. So to change it, start by changing your breathing. When you're taking few deep breaths, you're no longer thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
3 deep breaths changes your energy and your state in the moment. And that's the start. Because very often people don't change their breathing, they don't work on their breathing enough. They go through it as if trying to rationalize when the solution is not in the head, but it's in your body. Okay? How it works is you have a thought, something happens to you, you think about it, and it creates an emotional, physical reaction in you. Right? And then you need to rework it backwards using the same. So you start with the physical and emotional reaction to come and change your thoughts and your meaning to it. That's the formula, I would say. So when you apply a conscious approach to it, you breathe, you move, you work on your body, it will change your emotions, your energy, and that allows you to change your mental state because you're in a different state. Your energy level your vibration has changed. Make sense? That's why I say courage is the first level. The courage to face it, the courage to accept, the courage to face, and the courage to change. For me, the way I like to say it is the hero is not the one who's realized the change. The hero is the one who decided to change.
But then can we trigger that frequency? So for instance, you say that the first one is courage equals a certain frequency. Can we trigger that frequency alone?
Yeah, you can. Actually, just like you can trigger a thought, that is, you just think of it and it triggers an emotion in you, you can also work it backwards by triggering a different energy or a state in you. It's, in NLP, it's called state management. State management is the ability to switch on or switch off a particular energy at will. And how it works is you access that thought in your mind, you amplify it, and then you apply it. It's a simple principle. Access, amplify, and apply. So you access a time when you felt courage. So you kind of feel, for example, in the moment, say something difficult happens. I'll take the same example, like you've just lost your job, or you've just been given bad news. You kind of feel certain energies or emotions, like you might be sad, you might be depressed, you might be anger, and confidence or positiveness is not accessible to you. So what happens first is you breathe in, and then you use your body as a trigger to change that. How you do it? Sometimes just by changing your posture. Changing your posture changes your energy. Agree? If you look at the Superman pose, for those who need to feel confident when making a presentation, just by changing your posture, Superman or Wonder Woman pose, you become confident. You raise your level of confidence, you amplify it. So your body knows, because your body stores that energy. In the way you hold yourself through your postures and your gestures. When you're aware of it, just by changing that, you change your mindset then. That's how it works, actually.
if we go back to that frequency, right, and likewise, every part of our body is at a certain frequency, then can we say that us as the Manish that I see, or me sitting here, we have a common frequency?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say we all have a common frequency based on the emotion that we are feeling at the moment, and at which we are vibrating. That's where, you know, for example, when people are in love, they are vibrating at the same frequency. And if, for example, you're in love with someone, but that person is not in love with you, then you're not vibrating at the same frequency. That's why it doesn't create rapport, and you don't really get in a relationship then.
If we were to analyze this from a point of view of energy, initially when those two people are compatible, we are simplifying this action by saying they are compatible. But energy-wise, what is happening that makes them compatible physically?
Well, the hormones that we generate, that we secrete in our body, and it also goes through our pores, depending on the situation. For me, it's situational, all this. In the situation, in the moment, if you're feeling stressed, you'll have cortisol and adrenaline very often through your system, which might make you do certain things, which then might impact the relationship. Okay? And how you're able to maintain that is, as a person in the relationship, how do you come in with an energy which is calming, soothing, with other energies or other hormones like oxytocin, which is the hormone of connection and bonding, as well as endorphins, which is the hormone of happiness and joy, and that people feel good. So how do you bring that in so as to be able to balance it? The whole thing about energy is, when someone is down, your ability, it's a dance, your ability is to be able to balance that with your energy. And vice versa, when you're down. That's why people stay in relationships and they remain compatible, because their ability to, in the dance, they can balance each other. Sometimes lifting the other one, or vice versa.
And taking on that example, you know how you go into a room and something happens, right? And then we all have an intuition or a feeling, a thought of what happened. So what is common is everyone feels it or everyone thinks it, but what is different is the interpretation or the meaning they give to that thought or that intuition. So the question is, why is that, and how does that work, and what is that link with the frequencies and the energies?
You see, the way we look at the mind, you have 3 levels of the mind. The first level is called the cognitive mind. That is the mind that we have in terms of, which is more linked to the brain and ability to think, cognition, to think, to reflect, to understand, to analyze, to rationalize. The second level of the mind is the somatic mind. So the mind inside of our body. And that relates a lot to our intuition and our feelings that we feel in our body. And the third level is called the field mind, is the mind outside of your body. So, and all of it is connected. That is, when you go, as you explain from your example, you go into a room, something happens, everyone feels something. So let's say you go in a room, you feel the energy is tense. So that's your somatic mind, which is processing it. How you feel it is very often through our skin, through our pores, because we also secrete hormones. And the hormones that we secrete, for example, when we are focused, you have dopamine. When you're happy, you have endorphins. When you're stressed, you have cortisol. So when there's an element of tension and stress, you have high adrenaline and high cortisol in people, and it flows through our pores, and we kind of pick it up. So
how are your dopamine levels right now?
It's good. It's very focused. And so from there, we are able to pick it up. And it's only when we try to rationalize based on the filters we have, we try to make sense of it based on the information we have. That is a bit our processing power. The more you've developed self-awareness and you've explored, you've learned about it, the more resources you have to better understand it.
And where does self-awareness and personal growth and self-leadership come into play with all of what we've discussed?
So self-leadership comes into play in the sense that how you lead yourself allows you to lead others, because you cannot lead others if you're not leading yourself properly. And people will follow you for what you're good at. And self-leadership, you can break it down into 3 elements. The first element is self-awareness. How much you are aware of your own personality, your own traits, your own strengths, your own values, your own beliefs, your own limits as well. The second element of self-leadership, after self-awareness, is self-regulation, is how you manage your emotions. That is, once you're aware of whatever is happening, including your thoughts and your emotions, is then how do you transform that? How do you transform your thoughts? How do you transform your beliefs? And more importantly, how do you transform your emotions and your energy? And the third element of self-leadership is self-learning, is how do you keep sharpening the saw? How do you keep investing in yourself? And how do you keep an open mind to, or what we call a growth mindset, in order to keep becoming a better version of yourself? So all of this, when you put it together, the whole notion of self-leadership is basically how do you become a better version of yourself in this journey?
And to be able to do that, go through that process, one requires a strong sense of purpose. How do you get to know what your purpose is? Or how do you then stick to that?
It's difficult to find your sense of purpose, isn't it? Not always straightforward. Actually, if you look at it, the 3 most difficult questions that we have to answer in life are: what's my purpose? Who am I? And what's next for me?
This reminds us of spiritual masters, like Adi Shankara, or the very recent Swami Vivekananda, who, philosophers who question, who am I? And linking that to the ego in us. What is your view on that?
It's the easiest and yes, most challenging question to ask. It's very simple. Who am I? And yet the most challenging question, where you have so many multiple facets to answer it. And the more you answer it, the deeper you go, the more you peel the onion, the more you find treasures in yourself. I think who am I, the journey of it, before you start your journey on finding your purpose, the question you need to ask yourself is, who am I? And it's from that sense of being, that's why we call it being and doing. From the answering the question, who am I, comes a clarity on your being. At the end of the day, we are human beings. That's why the I am. Okay? And one of my teachers shared that with me. You know what is the name of God? Without any religious kind of perspective. The name of God from ancient Aramaic and ancient Hebrew was Yahweh, which is I am. Okay? And in that sense, we all are gods in one way or the other. And in other certain philosophy, they say God lies within each and every one of us. And we have the ability to create, manifest things around us, positive or negative. When it comes to the ego in it, the ego part is that it's been researched a lot in psychology, the ego and the superego and so on. And yet, most of the time, most people in society today, we have distorted the meaning of the ego. The ego is tend to be seen as negative. It should not. The ego is just what it is. It's an objective view that we need to have about it. What people suffer from when we say he has a big ego, in fact, people don't have big egos. You just have a small ego and an ego. Okay, that is, your ego is your sense of self, of who you are, and your understanding of yourself, your ability to observe your thoughts. And the more you make meaning of things, you get clarity on yourself. what we focus on that distortion of the ego is that when people have a small ego, that they don't know enough of themselves, they think small of themselves. And there are two ways in which you react then. Either you feel from lack of confidence, or you project it the other way around. What we call a counterphobic approach is you show overconfidence. And it is perceived as a big ego then. But there's no such thing as a big ego. There's just the ego or the lack of it. Right? And the more you understand that, the more you work on your self-awareness, the more you work towards shaping or completing your sense of ego. You move from that lack of ego to completing your ego.
And going back to who am I? Do you regularly ask yourself that question?
Not anymore. I've gone that phase where it's really coming with an acceptance of who am I. That's where I came up with my sense of self. My metaphor for my sense of being is a corporate monk. I associate with that energy and the states that it holds. And also, who am I? That's why I say I wear multiple hats. I'm in the human resources field. I'm in coaching. I'm also a father. I'm a son. I'm a husband. I'm a friend. I'm a mentor. So I've accepted all these different facets of me and integrated it. What's more important is knowing and accepting who am I, that those elements, what is possible for me now.
What about going much deeper? What about asking yourself that being a good thing, even on a daily, weekly basis, in the sense that it's almost like you are defragmenting your mind. So you have all those thoughts and they go in and like, who am I? Does that thought align with who am I being my branding? Does it align with my branding? Does it align with my purpose? And by doing that, are you, in a way, by defragmenting, taking out those emotional baggages?
You can, actually. The thing is, when you are clearer on the who am I question, it allows you access to a wealth of resources inside of you. Because very often the questions you're seeking, the answer you're seeking lie within you. And when you ask yourself, who am I? It's like in a situation, for example, who am I being in this role? It brings you back down to earth, what you are meant to be in this role, in specific roles that you're playing. Sometimes when I come home from my corporate hat and I come home, I have to change my sense of being a bit, alter it so as to be a parent. Asking myself, who am I being in the moment with my kids, gets me back into that state of being a father and leaving at the door my professional life. And yet, by asking it, we're able to change and to be more grounded and be more present with it.
I want to move on to energy and leadership, right? You train a lot of people. And is it fair to say that when you're training those people, you are in fact aligning their energies and managing their emotions?
Yes, I work with people and help them better understand energy first, but more, I would say, decoding in the sense of your emotions. And it starts with looking after yourself. So in a holistic manner, there's a couple of elements around it. So first is around your physical energy, that is your physical health. Second would be your mental health, so looking after your mind. And third is your emotions, your emotional health. Then there's spiritual health, that is your purpose, how you're doing things in a meaningful way and adding value. Then you have the social health, the relationships that you have around you, which is a bit your support system. So in order for someone to be, in a sense, balanced and integrated and have a harmony in their lives, And to lead others, you need to be able to lead yourself with looking at these dimensions: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. Okay. Now, coming to the question of, do I manage their emotions? I don't manage the emotions of people. I make them aware of it, of their own emotions, and so that they can transform and manage their emotions themselves. What I can do is I can lead by example. I can share experiences which they can learn from it and reflect from it. What we do, though, is when we interact with people, is you have the ability to hold the space for people to, and you can induce emotions in them. You can induce certain specific hormones in them. That is, have you ever had an experience when you meet someone, it uplifts you?
Yeah.
Right? Because they're vibrating at a higher frequency.
Or vice versa. You
And
meet
vice
somebody,
versa.
you don't feel nice.
Yeah, it drains you.
Yeah.
Call them energy vampires.
How do we protect our energy then? How do we create boundaries? Like if I take your example, your case, you're meeting people, you're managing people, but how do you protect your energy?
I do a few things. First, consciously as a boundary. First one would be, I don't get stuck in the story. What it means is, when I'm meeting people, especially in the field that I am in, I get to meet a lot of people, share a lot of insights, but also listen to stories and difficult situations. It's very easy to be pulled down into the rabbit hole of it. And then you start to feel for them and feel with them. The key is to have a certain, you kind of balance it, and I'm working with you, but I don't need to feel what you're feeling. The second thing you can do about your boundaries is you can do energy cleaning of yourself. Sometimes, and it works, So if you've done any form of energy training, then it's you have to clean your energy, your space, as well as yourself. Including, very simply, if you don't do it, you don't know how to do it, just go and take a swim in the sea.
Really?
Yeah. And that helps. The third one, I would say, how to create and protect your boundaries is through exercise. Find time for yourself to recharge, what I call self-care, to do things that you love to do. It can be a walk in nature, it can be gardening, it can be exercise or running, it can be meditation and yoga. So finding time for yourself allows you to recharge and to move away and to clean yourself from certain energies.
This awareness, is that what you called almost like an energy intelligence?
I would say so. Energetic intelligence is definitely an important element more and more in today's life, especially when you have to lead yourself, but also lead others.
And how do you see this fitting in the broader context of leadership when it comes to managing highly skilled individuals or even organizations?
So when it comes to leading organizations, we lead with energy. And people follow leaders because what they are good at, not by position, not by authority, naturally today by not only by their knowledge, but also by the energy and the charisma that they have. Very often you talk about a charismatic leadership, a charismatic leader. Why people like that person, very often it's about the energy. The energy that they hold, that is, they are resourceful, they're positive, they're future-oriented, they're grateful. So they have the ability to transform what you would call challenges and drawbacks into opportunities. So they have that ability to shift from a fixed to a growth mindset. And as a leader, being able to manage your energy is essential. And the core starts with managing your physical energy. That's the starting point. How you sleep, how you exercise, how you nourish yourself, how you hydrate, that is, how you drink. By drink, I mean water. And how you manage your emotions, that is, your emotional health. And also in that sense, you have physical, emotional, and spiritual health as well. So the spiritual part is, if you look at most leaders, they have some form of a spiritual practice. I'm not saying religious here, but spiritual practice, which is they can be of doing some kind of service, they can be going to church for them, they can be doing social work, they can be part of a community where they look after an environment or look after or they are very driven by a keen sense of purpose. So that helps also uplift your energy.
We've talked about energy intelligence, but what other types of intelligence are there that you can talk to us about that would define this subject that we're talking about?
There are two ways to look at it. You have, on one side, research done by a gentleman by the name of Howard Gardner, who talked about the 7 multiple intelligences. And he was one of the pioneers in it. That is, you just don't have IQ only. You have multiple types of intelligences, which can be applied in the field of education today, which should be applied. An example would be spatial awareness, spatial intelligence. Some people never get lost. Okay, you put them somewhere, you drop them in the middle of a city and they never get lost, they find their way. And that's a form of intelligence. Another form of intelligence is bodily intelligence. Those who are very good at dancing, you put a tune, they will dance in the moment, and they are able to really, they've seen a dance once and they can replicate it. They can repeat it. That's another form of intelligence, which unfortunately I don't have. Very bad dancer, actually. So these are examples. The other way you can look at it is, as I mentioned, is from a holistic point of view, you have what I would call 5 intelligences. You have physical intelligence, that is understanding your body, how you work with the energy in your body as well, and look after your body, which is the source of your energy. Then you have your mental intelligence, which is IQ. You have emotional intelligence, which has been researched and developed by Daniel Goleman in his book, Emotional Intelligence. You also have spiritual intelligence, which is around, as we mentioned, about purpose, values, meaning, and so on, and service. And then you also have social intelligence. Social intelligence is your ability to understand and thrive in a community and build relationships which are positive, resourceful, and worthwhile.
Often social and cultural intelligence go together, right?
Yes, yeah.
We rarely hear about social and cultural intelligence. How important do you think this is today when we look at how the world is evolving? When we look at, very recently, right now, the UK riots, the US election, the Middle East conflict. How important do you think social and cultural intelligence is when it comes to our thoughts, our behavior, and our actions?
Mm-hmm. It's highly important, more important than ever in today's context where you have so much happening. The world is in a state of dynamic change, constant change. There's much more diversity in the interactions we have. You look around us today, you have diversity all around us. So there's a strong path towards diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion coming forward. So that demands a certain level of intelligence, what you'd call cultural and social intelligence, to be able to understand the different cultures, backgrounds, and to be able to work with. Let's not also forget that at the end of the day, what makes us human is our ability to relate with each other. So build relationships, and that will become even more important.
Let's talk tech. More so the impact of AI on self-development. Do you think AI is contributing or detracting from our human self-development?
I believe it's definitely improving and enhancing our ability to keep learning. The whole part of linking it back to self-leadership, where you have self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-learning. AI helps to adapt and adopt the approach of self-learning better.
But you know how they say consistent action equals consistent focus? And I think the link where there is habit, creating a habit. Mm-hmm. But if and when we use tech, when we're using AI, and we can all see in front of our eyes how AI is rapidly developing week after week after week, right? isn't that creating new habits in our system, which will ultimately change the different dimensions of intelligence in ourselves? What is your view between AI, habit, and ultimately the future of how we will perceive our intelligence?
So the way we see AI today, it's at the nascent stage, if you look at it. But importantly, those who are growing up with AI, what we would call AI native, they see the world differently. So that let's start with that. The way they see it as is they have a relationship with an AI, someone they can exchange with on a daily basis. It becomes kind of an alter ego, through which they ask a question and they will get an answer. Of course, it impacts our habits because then on one side, you don't have to spend too much time going to look for the answers, and it frees up time to do something else. That's what we need to be aware of and to be mindful of. That is, the time that you have available to you now from the work that is being taken over by AI. That is, whatever, if you do something which has a formula, it is formulaic in nature, it will be taken over by an AI sooner or later. It frees up time. So it's what you do with the time. We can use AI to focus on how it can create augmented intelligence in people. If you take our education system, my belief is our education system puts us in a box and everyone goes through the same kind of exposure, same kind of learning without looking at your strengths and your intelligences. We talked about multiple intelligence before. Say, for example, someone has a specific intelligence around spatial awareness, around visualization. So that person would be very good at, for example, becoming an architect or interior designer. But who would pick that up? No one picks it up at school, your qualities. But if you adapt and customize AI for the development of human beings, focusing and nurturing the strengths, then you can help them become the best version of themselves and also find something which will be related to their purpose and where they would have fun doing it.
What about careers? Because more and more we see people going through pluridisciplinary skills or even career changes.
People will be able to move jobs and move careers more than before. We are in that stage and age where, with the whole element of planned obsolescence, every 2 years you change a mobile phone, every 4 or 5 years you change a car. So people have that mindset about changing what they're doing every at least 3 years moving forward. And it's expected that kids growing up today will have up to 15 different changes in their career, either whether they choose to be in the same field or choose completely different alternative.
Attention span. Does that have anything to do with social media?
It has to do with social media as well, because we're spending more and more time on screens. The neuroscience behind it is we are creating, I'll use a politically incorrect term this time, is dopamine junkies. Okay, in a way, they figured out that the more you shorten the video and to make it impactful, you will scroll until the next. So what you're looking for is dopamine to stay in a way on a high. It captures your attention, and when you are high on dopamine, you kind of feel good. Your mind it's consuming your mind, but at the same time you're feeding the mind.
Having a generation with such a low attention span, what do we do? Do we either communicate to them within that span, or is there a possibility to go back?
I don't think it's a possibility to go back. It's difficult. What we could do is you have to manage it. It's a bit like, I would say, when a condition becomes chronic, you have to manage it.
Is it chronic?
I think it is chronic today. That's my belief.
Okay, now let's reverse the situation. For instance, we all have social media. And the algorithms are such that it will only show me the stuff that I like. And these days, I don't even need to like something for it to know what I like, because it's measuring by the time I've watched, how many things that are similar have been watched, and it automatically feeds you those content. Us as content creators, we're super hyped with that, because we want to make sure that we're producing stuff that is aligned with what people will want to watch, right? So if I'm sitting on my device, and yes, I'm on social media, but yet I'm watching stuff that I like, which is giving me the dopamine, which is giving me all the good frequencies, is that something that we need to accept as being a good thing now?
I would say l'excès de tout nuit, as we say in French. There's an element of balance that we need to have. I'm not saying it's not good. We have it's a new normal that we have to accept, but we have to make sure that we're not crossing limits. That is going to you're spending too much time on the screen, which then becomes detrimental to your mental and emotional well-being.
But even before social media, the same thing, the same thought process could be applied to somebody going to work, waking up, going through their processes. I brush my teeth, I get dressed, I drive my car, and it's a cycle, right? And then you have to break from that cycle, just like how you mentioned, to become aware, have purpose, or have a different frequency of thought. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It's fair to say it's the same story, just the environment, which is a bit different, because the way we are conditioned today with social media has changed a bit. The way we used to live, what we used to call métro, boulot, dodo.
Yeah. And the question now is, how do organizations fit into this thought structure? So how do they help promote the pluridisciplinary skills, the career changes, etc.?
You have to provide experiences, what you call people experiences, or what you would call meaningful experiences. On one side, the ability to feel part of a community, which is supportive for you. Second is experiences to keep learning and growing and onboarding new skills, which can help you. Third, I would say, is organizations need to be able to help people find balance, or what I'd call work-life harmony, is even more important than before. When you have a combination of these three elements, it allows you to be more at peace and in a way to be at your best, so as to work with and live with purpose.
What about the use of NLP, the neuro-linguistic program, something that you're very acquainted with?
Yeah. What about it?
Well, what I want to know is, how do you use that? For instance, you're part of an organization, you manage a lot of people, and we've just talked about how organizations need to nurture people into those different scenarios. How can you use NLP in those processes, or how do you use NLP?
So how we can use NLP? NLP basically is neuro-linguistic programming. It's the art and science of modeling excellence at work or in practice. So excellence of people, how people do things. So the whole fundamental principle of NLP is, if someone is doing something really well, you can learn from it. That is, genius can be copied. All it takes is to break it down one step at a time. So you learn what they're doing and then you apply it. So the multiple applications of it are, first is the word self-mastery, or what I would call self-leadership, to expand your self-awareness and your ability to better manage yourself. So which includes the self-regulation part I talked about, how to be aware of your emotions and manage your emotions, how to expand your horizon and be able to be clearer in terms of self-awareness, understanding your strengths, your beliefs. And more importantly, it also teaches you how to master communication, the frames of communication. So how do you pre-frame a conversation? How do you reframe a conversation? Which means, how do you change the direction? How do you influence people positively? As well as, how do you ensure that whatever you're communicating and you're able to build relationship based on that is positive?
It's also to do with mind shift and mindset shift.
Yes.
Or mindset reframing, as you call it. Can you talk to us about
Yeah.
that?
So one part of it is understanding how mind works. What you call our thought process, we call it the frames of mind. We have different frames of mind. And one of the frames of mind you need to understand is whatever drives us is driven by a certain value that we are upholding. Say, for example, even if it's an unresourceful behavior. So, for example, if you learn NLP, you can also learn at a point in time to overcome certain of your negative habits.
The other thing I want to ask you is about neurosemantics. What is neurosemantics?
Neurosemantics is a field, is a part of NLP. It draws from NLP, and the focus semantics is the neuro part is your neuroscience, and the semantics is the word of it. So how do you make meaning from the levels of thoughts that you have? So it's basically a part of NLP where you try to understand what is driving your thoughts, your the way you see the world, your processes, and then you apply the changes around you in that sense.
Is it a bit like we were saying earlier? So then there's the thought, and then there's the thought process. So that mechanical bit, would you say that that is it?
It is, the way to define it is you go meta. Okay, you have the thought, and then as you go meta is you go at a higher level. What you think about the thought, what do you believe about it?
So
you get my
making
point?
meaning.
Making more further meaning, because you have different levels of meaning associated to just a simple thought, which drives a certain behavior.
Tell us more.
So I'll give you an example. It happens to me sometimes. I get angry about a situation, and after that, I feel guilty about being angry. You get my point of view. But how do I reach that level? Is I process that. What is making me angry? Okay, that's the thought. And as you go at a meta level, what triggered that anger? What am I feeling about being angry now? So the more you go at that level, you understand it better, you're able to change it.
What about languages? Does language have anything to do with how we shape our perception or our experiences?
Yeah.
Based on what you've said?
Yes. So as we talked about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, so the linguistic is the language. NLP, the L is the linguistic, is the language. And the way we say it is language is the software of the mind. Okay, that is, this is what you say
language
to yourself.
Is the software of the mind.
Yes.
I really like that.
It's very powerful, right? Language is the software of the mind. And whatever is the software, you can rewrite it. It's a code. Very often, the way we talk to ourselves impacts our mindset, our beliefs, and our behavior. If you rewrite that code, you change the way you talk to yourself, you change your behavior. That's one of the fundamental principles of it. So
is that why you would normally think in your native language?
People normally think in their native language, actually. And then when you start to talk, so for example, I think in English, and then when I have to talk in French, I need to translate it. Some people, they think in French, and then they speak in French. They're more fluent in it, in Mauritius, in the Mauritian context. So, and the language is also based on the vocabulary that you have accessible to you. Okay? But more importantly about the language, more the linguistic part, the words that you use, words have the power to influence our conscious mind, our unconscious mind, actually. And I'll give you an example. At a deeper level, the language we use sometimes, we're not even aware of it, but we very often say, I'm not good enough. So that's the number one disease in the world, I would say. I'm not good enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not old enough. I'm not competent enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. The moment you change that language and that's the language of a limiting belief, we call it. The moment you change that language, you change the meaning and you change the behavior.
Before ending, I want to take you to your first book, Shots of Insights. And I'll be the voice of your readers today. In a chapter, if I can recollect, it was chapter 14, you mentioned worry is a form of meditation.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? How can that be possible after this podcast?
If you want to know more, read the chapter.
Read the chapter.
Worry is indeed a form of meditation. You know, to meditate is what? Is to focus your mind on something and to be with that. When we're worrying, our mind is, if you look at it, our mind is focused on thinking about a situation which has not yet happened or which has happened in the past. So when you're worrying, you're training your mind to really focus on one aspect. And that's one of the principles behind meditation as well, is when you breathe, you're really focusing your mind to be fully present and to vibrate at a specific level. Yeah. And the same way, worry is a form of meditation because you're training your mind to focus on something which, in that sense, creates an anxiety in you and makes your mind vibrate at a specific level or specific frequency.
And we're really good at that.
We're really good at it. So, it's a good news for me.
Which then creates those lower frequencies.
Yeah, and it drains your energy. You go into life depleting energies. But it's also good news because if you can worry, you're already good at meditating.
Yeah.
And that's the reframe here. If you can meditate on your worry, you can also meditate on something being more present and being more grounded.
With that in mind, we've come to the end of our podcast. Manish, it's been a breath of fresh air to talk to you today. Thank you so much for coming to Conversations Live. And I wish you all the very best with your next book that will come out sometime in the future.
Thank you, Kabir. It's been a real pleasure on this journey and sharing with you. And the next book hopefully will be Shots of Insights, Volume 2.
Fantastic. See you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.